Hello, and welcome back to the Adaptive Journey podcast. I'm executive coach and writer Albert Wolfe, based in China.
And I'm executive coach JD Whitney, based in California in the US.
That's right. So we found a time when we're both awake and we're recording this podcast for you, working through our series on performance leadership, what we call EMMA, EMMA. And that's the 4 keys to getting more out of your team: expectations, motivations, measurements, and accountability. And you really need all 4. And we've already talked about, for some reason, we're going backwards. We've already talked about all of them except the first one, expectations, which is really kind of the foundation for the whole thing, wouldn't you say?
I absolutely would. And the reason why I think the reason why we came backwards is because uh, the pain that people feel is on the accountability end. That's where you look and you see the results aren't right. People aren't doing what you expect them to do. You're either overdoing accountability or underdoing it. And there's all this pain around that. And so it becomes a very popular topic to talk about. It gets a lot of resonance. And And so again, that's a good place to start the conversation. But then honestly, what we know is the root of the whole thing starts with expectations. And
Yeah.
if you can get the expectations right, then it makes accountability so much easier. And sometimes you might not even need to do it.
Yeah, for highly motivated people working with crystal clear expectations, accountability almost sorts itself out. I was, as you were talking, I was just reminded of years and years ago. I went into a chiropractor, with back pain and kind of up to even shoulder pain, and it was kind of weird. And it turns out, long boring story short, when I got new insoles for my shoes,
Mm,
that sorted me out. It wasn't actually a back problem. It was like a shoe problem or a foot problem. But I went talking about my back hurts, just like these leaders come to us saying we've got accountability issues. And we say, well, actually, let's drill right down to the foundation. It might be expectations,
yeah,
actually, because if we could have, we weren't really allowed by our designer. We weren't allowed to like style like Emma as big E and then MMA. But if we could, that would probably be the way to style it.
absolutely. It makes me just right out of the gate a story thinking about a recent engagement, talking to the customer. One of those things you talk to somebody in the company, it's like, "Oh, we have somebody who needs some coaching. We're gonna point you to their direct supervisor." Get the direct supervisor on the line, have a nice conversation, lots of resonance around what this person needs to change, what the issue is, talk about what we're gonna do. And then I just asked a question we always ask, how much of this does the coachee know? Have you had this conversation? And the answer was no,
Yeah.
nothing, probably not at all. We
Yeah.
hope they can guess. And to us, that immediately made us think, okay, we need to actually write that into this program to make sure we're dealing with both sides of this. Because if this person is not getting good feedback, if they're not getting clear expectation from their supervisor, how should they know? How should I know what good behavior looks like at work if nobody tells me?
Yeah, and it reminds me of another leader that we work with, and just transitioning into a new role in the same organization, and like hadn't even started the new role yet, and there was some issue with somebody in the team, and I remember he pulled her aside and said, that we can't have this. That can't really happen. It was like a 2-minute conversation and a little bit tough for him because, he's not actually been officially promoted into the new role yet, but he just knew it can't happen and people knew he was moving into it. And the response was, and he was nervous, but the response was the opposite. The response was, "Oh my goodness, thank you so much. Nobody has ever clarified that to me before. And I've been here for years." And so, he's doing Emma with the big E, Like right away, it kind of looks a little bit like accountability, but he didn't approach it that way. He approached it as here's what we can have here, here's what can happen. It wasn't that. So these are the expectations. And there was no consequences or anything. It was just an expectations conversation. And she was so thankful.
Yeah. So
So,
for our listeners, Albert, if you think about where where they're sitting today, whatever they're sitting with today, they're thinking about their team, they're thinking about their own leadership. What where do they start? Sometimes we've talked about, analysis or some kind of evaluation. Am I on the right track? Am I not on the right track? Or do they start clarifying right away? How do they know which places to clarify? Like, there's so much to think about within this, and we have 1,000 stories. But what would you pick for a starting point if somebody came to you and said, "We've got these accountability problems down the other end. We have a suspicion it might be due to expectations." Where do you start?
yeah. So, just to highlight one thing you're saying, people come and they say there's an accountability problem. They might say it's a motivations problem, right? We get a lot of calls saying, I've got really disengaged people. They seem really unmotivated. Basically, we always suggest start with expectations. Even if all the expectations are clear, just make sure they're clear. Just make double sure. And so there's no expectation gap. The expectation gap is what you think the expectations are and what they think the expectations are different. That's the gap. It's just very, very simple. And it's amazing how easy it can occur. So it can be you're asking where to start. It can
Yeah.
be a very, very simple conversation to say, here are my expectations. And I really recommend the leader leading. Don't ask, what do you think my expectations are as the first question, because that can feel like a trap.
Mhm.
It can feel weird. So you're the leader. Go ahead and lead. These are my expectations for X, Y, and Z. And it can be the other encouragement I really want to give leaders is it can be for anything. It can be for work performance. It can be for your KPIs, but it can also be for something like this is a real story. Here's the font size and whether or not I want an all caps email sent from you. No, I don't. That my expectation is normal font size, no colors, and no all caps emails. That's my expectations. Now, that's a 4 second, explanation to someone. Face to face is great if you can, and then just get their response. Just get their reaction to that. Okay, got it. Okay, great. So that's clear now. Done. Just practice with any little thing. Get a little success under your belt.
Yeah, I think that's great. And honestly, sometimes I would say even that sometimes it's those small things that can be more challenging because sometimes somebody feels like that's a part of their personality. Sometimes it's the stuff that you think is going to be even harder, which is, how somebody does their job, and they might be on the other end of that. This is one of those assumptions that I think we would just challenge is that, oh, my team doesn't want me to clarify that anymore, or that's micromanaging or something like that. And oftentimes the team on the other end of that feels super unclear. And the behavior that you're seeing as a leader is because they're unclear and they either don't know how to get the clarity or they feel like they've asked for clarity and not gotten it. Uh, and so they're just doing whatever their strategy is around that. And that can look very different in different contexts. Um, a, a fun, a fun kind of horrifying story in this context. I used to live
Oh, I
also
can't wait.
in China. Yeah, in China, where you are now, in a different city. And I remember working with a group of leaders in our organization. Middle leaders would be probably the closest way to describe it. There was a room of about 50 to 60 middle leaders. And this topic of expectation clarity came up. And we had a really good conversation about it. And then we asked them, what do you do when expectations aren't clear? How do you handle that? And the answer was, we just work harder.
Oh yeah.
And I said, "At what?" And they said, "At anything."
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
just want when the bosses look down, we want them to see us working hard, and so
Yeah.
we will be buzzing around like bees. We know it's not the right stuff to do, or at least we have a suspicion that it's not the right stuff to do, but nobody will help us know. Nobody's clarifying for us what those right things are. So, and we can't look like we're not working hard. We will not look lazy. So we will put in the extra hours on work that we're pretty convinced is not helpful.
Yeah.
Because that's
And
what
I
we're left with. Can you imagine if you can give that, people with that level of dedication and commitment and hardworking spirit some some good direction for that energy, what would be possible? It's amazing.
I know, and I just want to highlight because a lot of our listeners are leaders. I just want to highlight that is up to you, the leader, to fix. They're not going to come and work harder at asking you to clarify the expectations. They're going to work harder at literally everything else. And so you, the leader, have to take the initiative to make sure that expectations are clear and that they stay clear because they can drift very easily. I think
That's a great
I
point.
think I want to take this opportunity halfway into our show to read the opening quote that I prepared. So, so Jim Hart, one of the big scientists over at Gallup, is has summarized a lot of Gallup's research on um, engagement and expectations things. And so I'm just going to read. I'm going to read a quote that he says here. Uh, Employee engagement has declined after a decade of steady improvement leading up to COVID. So basically, we were doing better and better and better, and then COVID just reset everything. And the data suggests that many of the gains organizations made in clarifying role expectations and developing people and improving their day to day experience have stalled and, in some cases, begun to reverse. So, in many companies, the expectations are worse than ever. They're less clear than they've ever been. Never mind why COVID had that effect, but he goes on to say that during periods of ongoing change and uncertainty, which I think is what COVID did. He says during those times, clarity becomes more important, not less. And so I want to speak to some of the assumptions that you mentioned, some of the adaptive challenges
Mm,
that leaders face when maybe they know the expectations are not clear. So here's a few that we hear. Number one, well, how can I clarify to my team when my boss is not clarifying to me? That's the big, I would say, the biggest assumption, barrier, whatever we want to call it. Um, and so let me just answer that. It's a two-part answer. One is don't be part of the problem. Be part of the solution. So on the one hand, part one, clarify what you can. You can probably clarify more than you have. So going to your team and just, even if it's as simple as this is how I want emails sent, that will help them. That will actually increase engagement. That will increase motivation. But then don't be afraid, don't be shy to go to your boss and say, I would like a little bit more clarity around these things. If you can't, I understand because he or she may be in the same boat that they also have a boss. But just go with this genuine, with your three C's, your curiosity, your courage, and your care, and say, let's move the needle on clarifying expectations.
mm.
What are
Yeah,
some other, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, that I think is a really good one. Uh, and maybe an example, yeah, I would say that responding to the lack of clarity above can create a sense of, well, I don't know how to clarify for my people. And one thing that I think is fair to say in that is that's fair. That's a
Yeah.
reasonable reason that gets hard. Um, your to go just a little further in what what you're saying, Albert, if I clarify for my people, I'm sticking my neck out. I'm choosing a direction. I'm choosing priorities when those priorities have not been chosen for me. So I'm not confident that my priorities that I've set out for my people are actually in alignment with what's happening above me. And I think that that is one, risky behavior, which is why leaders hesitate to do it.
Yeah.
Two, it is courageous leadership and exactly what good companies will want from their people. Because the reason that you're experiencing that lack of clarity in many cases is because the people above you have also hesitated to choose priorities and clarify strategic direction. And that's why you don't have it. So that may not play out well for you in the short run, to be honest. Like some of those worries may really come to be. But then you have to ask yourself, do you want to work in a place that rewards everybody sitting around twiddling their thumbs, hoping somebody somewhere else will make a call? Or do you want to be in a place surrounded by people who are bringing order out of chaos and that rewards and incentivizes that kind of behavior? I hope that your place is that kind of place. I hope that it will become that kind of place even more through you and your behavior, whoever you are as a listener. Um, but I would just encourage you that, this is one of those things where people think if I do the right thing here, it might cost me my job. Or if I practice good leadership in this environment, it might cost me my job.
And it might.
And I would say absolutely it might sometimes. And do I want you to go running in that direction? No, we would always say safe, small movements in that direction. Take it little by little, but I would say absolutely move in that direction of good leadership and of what you think is right. Because if the company in the place that you're in over the long term doesn't want that kind of behavior, there will be a company out there that will recognize and reward that. Uh, and you're not going to get a better job working for a worse company and be happier than getting a job working for a better company that rewards that kind of behavior. And again, I'm talking to leaders. I understand that there's all kinds of pressures and realities. You should consider all of that before
Yeah.
sticking your neck out too far. But sometimes that's a clarifying moment for people saying, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah.
And it's like, I could end up working at a different company that, oh, actually wants me to, is willing to clarify these things for me. So moving to another worry.
Oh, really, really quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I just, I was just inspired listening to you then to mention one thing that maybe we don't talk about enough, which is um, our goal is not to eliminate every inefficiency in an organization
Mm,
or to make expectation gaps go from 0 to 100% closed. And it just we don't really talk about that enough, maybe. I think we sort of hope that that's implied, but that's maybe our expectation gap with our clients when we're not expecting that's not realistic because organizations are sort of
yeah.
these sort of living breathing things that will always have. And I was just thinking about the subway system, the metro system. London is famous for mind the gap, this phrase. And to have a working metro system, there's always going to be that little gap between the platform and the train, a little bit of breathing room. We just don't want it to be massive. And we also don't want it to be as big as it started. So, what we are going for, leaders out there, if you're listening, you're encouraged to take a courageous, like JD's saying, a small and safe step. Just move it, just make it smaller than it was and see what kind of gains come from that. So
Wait,
that's just I just want to had to throw that
yeah.
in before you go to your
And
next
if
one.
I carry on your analogy, I think I, you know, there's places we want zero gap between the wheels and the rails of the subway.
Yeah.
Zero gap.
Okay.
We don't want to. Well, maybe there's a physicist or an engineer on here who's like, that's actually not true, JD. But very, we don't want a big gap in that spot. But between the train and the platform, we do want a little bit of a gap. And between me and the person standing next to me, I actually want a larger gap is better. Uh, and so I think that that's part of where, leadership and wisdom come in and is the decision making power and honestly sometimes a conversation.
Yeah.
Is this one of those places where we need a smaller gap? Is it a place where we need a bigger gap? And where there's a lot of room to play here
Yeah, and so
versus here's a
you're
place
taking yeah,
where
go
we
ahead.
need to draw a line. Yeah.
You're just taking charge of the gaps, basically, is what we're saying. And that gap, that's too big. That's working against us. That gap, that's okay for now. I have better priorities.
And, and to be to take it even as a practical example related to the assumption that we were just talking about, I can't clarify for my people because it was not clarified for me. Just saying that out loud
Mm,
can sometimes relieve so much pressure for your
yeah,
team.
yeah,
To be able to say, I know we have these two competing priorities in our business right now, that I am bringing the conversation to my bosses, and they have not clarified this for us yet. And so for a while, I want you to know I can't clarify that for you right now. The conversation is happening. I recognize it makes your job difficult, and you're going to need to live with that for a while.
and
That
isn't
is
it?
so clarifying for your people.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't it so funny that saying that is actually closing an expectation gap?
It
I am
100% is.
I am expecting that this will stay unclear.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I because of time, let's move into a couple of others and maybe
sure.
so one that occurs to me is, and I've heard this several times, like I won't know what I want. Like I'm afraid to start the conversation because I don't even know what I want. And I think that, well, one quick thing for that is just to say, well, maybe that's it. Okay. You can start the conversation and say, hey, I wanted to talk a little bit about this area. I want to make sure we're on the same page. And I'm not 100% clear what my expectations are around this. How do you approach this? So that's different than a trap, right? That's so I'm asking first,
Exactly.
but that's a way to phrase the asking first in a way that puts it out there and says, let's talk a little bit about your sales call volume. What's a reasonable expectation there? Or so, just as an example. And your
Yeah,
person may come
because
back and say, this works for me. Does that sound good to you? And you may be like, that's way more than what I was gonna ask you for. So, perfect.
that's a micro version of being the leader and leading with your expectations. Because in one sentence you said, "Listen, I'm not entirely sure what my expectations are." Done. You have now led the conversation. You
Mm,
instead of starting with, "What are your expect or what do you think my
yeah.
expectations?" You actually that one key sentence is so crucial that you said there. And I mean, you can just play it out if your boss said that to you, right? How different
Oh,
that
that's
would
so
be.
good.
Go ahead.
I
What's
100%,
another
dude.
one?
Another one, I think that there's an expectation or there's an assumption sometimes that setting really clear expectations and really clear boundaries can, will make you the bad guy.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
one of my good friends comes to mind, somebody that I've worked with and worked with their team. So I know these people well, in the field of private equity. And this is a field like, this is an industry that is known for being cutthroat. It is extraordinarily clear what return on investment looks like because it's a number
Yeah.
every
Did you hit
single
it
time.
or not?
Yeah, you either made money on this deal or you did not make money on this deal. And, the presentations of deals, where the process of choosing deal meetings, process of choosing where do we put the money, are absolutely cutthroat, from an intellectual perspective. It is incredibly rigorous. Uh, it's not always clear, but there's a lot of data involved. Um, so incredibly high expectations, incredibly rigorous environment. And my friend, when I talked to his team, what really, really struck me was what I heard from the team. I heard things like, I want to be him when I grow up. I want to. Now that part you might be like, okay, that just sounds like, yeah, they just want to climb the next rung in the ladder and be in that spot. And then, but no, I want to lead like this person. I want my team to look at me the way I look at him. I want to, and this is where it starts to really shock. I want to lead my family the way he leads his family. I want to be the kind of human being that this person is. That to me is a level um of support, of admiration for a human being that I don't hear very often,
Yeah.
honestly. Uh, and this is somebody who was absolutely straight in declaring their expectations to their team and letting people know when they had not done it or when the thinking or the research wasn't there behind the case they were making, or willing to cut and run on a deal that was losing money and about to lose more. Uh, an incredibly clear set of expectations and absolute admiration for the leader. And I just want to share that out there because I think very few of our listeners will be in that kind of environment. Uh, but I think that's just an extreme case example to say just because you're clear doesn't mean that you won't be admired. Doesn't mean that people won't um, see who you are in that clarity. And in fact, some of that clarity may actually be a part of what made this
Yeah.
leader so admirable in his people's eyes.
So one of the adaptive leadership hacks is, I want to be more adaptive. I want to be better at adaptive leadership. So think about the three C's: curiosity, courage, and care. But another adaptive leadership hack is a simple question: what if the exact opposite were true? So I I don't want to clarify expectations because then people will like me less. We just asked, what if the exact opposite were true? What if clarifying expectations is actually what they need to like you more?
Hmm. Yeah, and again, we would send people out with small experiments
Yeah,
to test that, to see in a very small and safe way, not a
yeah,
show up tomorrow in a completely different way at work. Because if you show up in a completely different way at work, guns blazing in a different direction, that's going to cause carnage, and it's actually probably going to push you back in your usual behavior. But absolutely, um, entertain the possibility that that there's more room to grow and increase performance by leaning into expectation. Absolutely. Albert, what's
yeah.
something for you that is shifting in your thinking today, or maybe coming back to the front for you as we have this conversation?
I was just reflecting on your statement that this might cost you your job and that might be a good thing for you. I'm sort of paraphrasing what you said. Um, just think about how many times we're sort of stuck in a situation because, again, there's sort of the assumption that this is as good as it gets, basically. And what if the exact opposite were true? What if this is as bad as it gets and you can only go up from here, but all those things, all those actions that are holding you here or maybe keeping you protective of what you have, maybe that's the problem. So that really struck me today, and I thought that was cool that you added that to the conversation.
Yeah, what's remarkable to me is when I think about the circumstances when we've had those kind of conversations, most of the time that's blocking people from the very behavior that they need to transform their work situation and actually thrive where they are. So
Yeah,
it's definitely when we're thinking about what when you shared the exact opposite, what if the exact opposite were true? I think that even presses the boundaries of where I tend to go in my own assumptions. For me, it's like, oh, maybe it's 30% true or 70% true. And I love the idea of turning it all the way around and having a look.
yeah,
Thanks for that.
yeah. You kind of need the three C's to do that, though. You've got to go with genuine curiosity. What if that were true? It's probably not entirely true. a little bit of courage to test how true it is and care not to break the relationships that you have along the way. So this is just as a kind of final plug here. This is the sort of deep work that happens in our Adaptive Leader Studio, and I'm going to put a link in the show description here. It's a hybrid of online, in-person learning, which is 100% focused on making leaders more adaptive, making you a better, upgraded version of yourself in an authentic way that doesn't feel forced. So if you're interested in the studio, click on the link in the show description. And thanks, JD. This was fun.
Always fun. It's been fun to go through all of Emma with you.
All right. See you later. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.